Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages over the age of 18. If not, get out of here. Unless you're Aaron Cruz, who's like 12. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestle Plug. We're going to discuss NXT New Year's Evil, which we have just watched live. But thankfully for you, you don't have to just look at my ugly mug. You can look at another ugly mug from across the pond, because joining myself, Aaron X, is, of course, the returning master of Sly Fox Broadcasting. If you're into sports, you should be checking out Sly Fox Sports on YouTube. You can see me, but most importantly, you can see this man, Jeremy Sly Fox Miller. Welcome back to the podcast, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. And my God, what a fucking pay-per-view / what, I don't know what you call that, mini pay-per-view, but that was fucking insane.
Yeah, television pay-per-view of sorts. Now, I don't care that they're going head-to-head. I had a choice. I could watch AEW's New Year's Smash Part 1, or I could watch this. Ultimately, I had to choose this.
I'm kind of irritated with AEW because that's just a rip-off of NJPW's New Year Dash.
Yeah, it is a little bit, actually.
Fuck off. Seriously.
Yeah, and that was quite eventful as well. My lord. But yeah, we're going to cover this. We'll also cover AEW as well. We'll catch up with that, and no doubt we will drop a review. That might be dropping parallel to this. But we're going to discuss NXT and what way to open the show. As you know, I love meaty hoss battles, and they don't get much bigger than Damian Priest versus the returning Karrion Kross, at least the returning Karrion Kross to pay-per-view. Karrion Kross, of course, spent a number of months out with injury after winning the NXT Championship, and here he is going after Damian Priest, who has, of course, been on a tear of his own right. Great match. Karrion Kross remains undefeated. I know this was the match that you missed out on because you had started watching New Year's Evil late, which is fine. I thought it was excellent, hard hitting. Do you know what I loved about this match? Only one flip in the entire match. Now, I'm not going to harp on about how I hate AEW because I don't. I'm not going to take cheap shots like so many people do, but I will say one thing. A lot of their matches involve a lot of athletic, gymnastic kind of stuff, and that's fine. But I like to see a good variety of matches. And this is why I prefer NXT. Not because it's necessarily far and away a better product, but because it gives me a little of everything instead of really hammering the senses with too much of the same thing. This match, one flip, and that was when Damian Priest does his fantastic little springboard tope where he sort of springs off one rope over to the outside, does the flip onto Karrion Kross. Other than that, no flips, no crazy high-flying nonsense. And because of that, it meant that the Cruiserweight title match, which came after that, had more impact for me. It meant more to me because I was seeing a lot more of that Lucha Libre style, which isn't necessarily just flipping. Fantastic match. Kross obviously wins. I thought that was fairly predictable, especially as he's still undefeated. Obviously, you've got to think that he's going to be heading his way back to the NXT title once he's done with this rivalry. Obviously, you didn't see the match, so I'm not expecting you to comment on that. But you're okay with Kross still being undefeated? Don't feel like this hurts Priest too much?
No, I think Damian Priest is... I think I'm going to go out and say this. Damian Priest is going to be a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble this year.
Good choice.
I think he's ready to get that push that Keith Lee got, put him in the Rumble, and let him do his thing. He seems like he'd be ready for a main roster push. I could see him and Drew McIntyre killing it. That would be a fucking hoss battle if I've ever seen one. At least it wouldn't be Oldberg or anything like that. Fucking idiot. I am glad that Kross won. I expect Kross to go right after Finn Balor or Kyle O'Reilly, whoever won. But you know, he lost the title because he got injured. He's gonna get the title back, and I have no doubt in my mind that somewhere, probably next takeover, we'll see Kross versus the NXT champion.
No question. I think that's lining up nicely. On to cruiserweight business. Legado Fantasma's leader, Santos Escobar, who frankly looks like a G. What a gangster that boy is. There are a lot of people looking like gangsters on this show. That guy looks so polished, so good. The future of Latin wrestling. I take a real pride in Latin culture, as everybody knows. I particularly love Latin American wrestling, Lucha Libre wrestling. And as I've explained so many times on this podcast, Lucha Libre doesn't mean flipping around like a young buck. It means a lot of different things. It can mean high flying, like, of course, the king of the ropes himself, Gran Metalik, who challenged Santos Escobar for the Cruiserweight title. Ultimately, fruitless effort for him. There was a little bit of interference. Of course, he had Lince Dorado at ringside. Been quite a good week for the Lucha House Party as well, beating the Hurt Business on Raw. Looks like they're next in line for a tag team title shot, which is nice to see. Getting some use out of them. They're not just sitting around being jobbers, and I really like that. WWE gets a lot of shit for not using enough of its talent. But ultimately, these are guys who about a year ago were jobbers and nobody gave a shit about. And here they are in a more prominent position. Great match. Again, because I didn't see too much flipping or over-the-top nonsense from the first match, this meant more to me when I did see it. But what I liked about it was the fact that Santos Escobar is a very ground-based lucha libre artist, very similar to Angelico, who spent a lot of time in AAA in Mexico. There's very much a onus on technical wrestling in lucha libre, and if you actually speak to a lot of the legendary luchas and people like Blue Demon Jr. and things like that, Mil Mascaras and everything that goes with that, it's not always about 450 Salcal triple flip, corkscrew moonsaults into the oblivion. There's a lot more to it. And this match really showed that. And what I liked about it was the onus on history, tiny little storytelling aspects as well, trying to remove the mask. Because in his eyes, he doesn't need to wear a mask because he's better than that. He's above that culture. He has evolved from that culture. And of course, Grand Metalik still much more traditional in the sense of wearing his mask. And ultimately, when you remove your mask, it's supposed to be a tribute, not only to the fans, but a sort of sign of respect and moving on. It has so many different meanings. It can mean a sign of disrespect, mask versus mask. I think it's called a lucha de expuesta or somewhere along those regions. My apologies.
Yeah. It's basically a death sentence if you lose.
It's very important in Mexico, actually. You get a lot of mask versus mask. And actually, if you look at Wikipedias of any Mexican wrestlers, you'll see that they actually have a separate win-loss tally for the Espuesta matches, which is the mask versus mask stuff. But yeah, I love Santos Escobar. He is a G. I think the placement of the two guys next to him as well. I think they I think it's, what is it, Raul Mendoza and I know it's DJZ. Huh?
Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza.
Wild, yeah, who I know obviously is DJZ, but it was fantastic in TNA for a while. Yeah, I think they're in a good placement as well. Not too over the top. They make for a fairly decent tag team, but ultimately they're his heavies. Like this match, good match. Another win for Santos Escobar. As far as like who challenges, who takes the belt from him next, who would you like to see be the next Cruiserweight champion?
Go with me on this. Okay. So we've got Legado del Fantasma. We've got Santos Escobar, Joaquin Wilde, and we've got Raul Mendoza. They just went up against Lince Dorado and Grand Metalik. There's Kalisto is, I don't even know what the fuck's going on with
SmackDown,
Kalisto.
apparently. He got drafted to SmackDown.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I could see they do another Latin faction, bring Andrade back down, and have Andrade go up against Legado with Metalik and Dorado, and then set up at like the bigger, like the WrestleMania pre-pay-per-view, Andrade versus Santos Escobar for the Cruiserweight title.
You might have to cut a bit of weight. I think Andrade's a big unit of a man these days. He's pretty jacked. But, I mean, from a wrestling standpoint, that would be world-class. That would truly be one of the best matches you'd see all year. I'd love to see that. I'd actually like to see a use of more legends as well. I'd love to see, not necessarily win it, but I think what would really help Santos Escobar is a win over Rey Mysterio.
Ooh.
I think that would really set things apart, particularly as you got Halloween coming up. You could have Halloween Havoc, a little bit of a nod to that. He could wear the same gear he wore in that famous Cruiserweight title match in 1997 against Eddie Guerrero. I think that would be fantastic. Nice little tip of the cap, as they say, to things. And I think that would really set Santos Escobar on his way. But I like him because he's very different to your typical Latin wrestler. He's more promo heavy. Do I think he's the next Eddie Guerrero? Not entirely. I think he's a very different style of wrestler, actually, in a lot of different ways. A little bit more cartel orientated.
I see him being, as much as I hate the guy, but I liked him in the ring, I see him more being like an Alberto Del Rio.
Yeah, there is that, actually, that kind of almost like an obscene arrogance about him. Like, I'm a man of wealth and taste. And actually, that's a line, obviously, from the Rolling Stones. And it's also one that Wade Barrett uttered during this match, who, by the way, was fantastic on commentary. it's big shoes to fill for Vic Joseph and Wade Barrett, having to take over essentially from Nigel McGuinness and Mauro Ranallo, and they've done an excellent job, actually, far better than the other Wednesday night commentary team in my personal opinion. But yeah, nonetheless, a very good match indeed. The women's last women's standing match is fucking hell. I'm going to try not to be too cretinous because obviously I'm very much in love with Raquel Gonzalez. She is literally like my perfect woman. Her and Dakota Kai as a pairing, that's unacceptable. I have a hard time watching without passing out from dehydration. But nonetheless, I love Meaty Hoss. And who says that Meaty Hoss should be restricted just to the men? Absolutely not. Rhea Ripley is literally this close to being projected to the stratosphere of stardom. I think he's very much ready to be the next big marquee talent. It's quite funny, actually, because when Charlotte Flair beat her for the NXT title at WrestleMania, people were like, oh my God, this is fucking disgusting, one outrage. Actually, what that was for me personally, and what I'm getting the impression is, that was a taster to see how well Miss Ripley was going to do on a larger stage. She got to compete at WrestleMania against arguably the biggest women's wrestler in the world. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, even though she dropped her belt. Her booking has been a little wishy-washy in places, but this stuff that she's done with Raquel Gonzalez has not only reinvigorated her in a lot of ways, but it's also helped bring up new talent. Dakota Kai feels like a bigger starter through this, even though she got stuck in a locker during this match, which is shows how small the young lady is. Absolutely amazing.
I love it. I fucking loved it.
Wow, just even something as serious and as violent as this match found its way into a comedy element there. So that's how you do comedy in wrestling well without being ridiculously stupid about it. This, for me, was match of the night, actually. I thought this was head and shoulders above everything else. And also, again, like I say, I don't want to take cheap shots, but I will say this. AEW's women's wrestling is garbage by comparison. And how anyone can argue that NXT isn't as good as AEW when it comes to women's wrestling is frankly, well, let's just say you need some medication, and we'll leave it at that because I want to be polite. But ultimately, this is a world-class match. Not only that, it's a world-class gimmick match. You would not afford this kind of quality of gimmick match to a lot of women around the world, particularly at an AEW. I wouldn't trust their women to be able to pull off a match like this. I can trust. And the thing is, with Raquel Gonzalez, she's only really been in the spotlight for the better part of 6 months. And already she feels like a monstrous star, like her back muscles, her presentation, everything about her. She's just a Leviathan, and she's ready-made to fill that slot because obviously Rhea Ripley, especially after losing this match, she's moving on to main roster. What that means is Raquel Gonzalez can slide right in as the destroyer of the women's division. No problem. You don't miss a beat. Fantastic stuff. I love this match. I love both these women. They are world-class. They are specimens. The physicality, the beauty, the technical precision, the power, the aggression, the star power, the it factor. Some people feel like stars. They jump out at you through the screen. And these two women do as soon as they come out. As soon as Rhea Ripley's music hits, this is my brutality. She stomps that foot down. The fire goes off. The way she looks is so different to anyone else. It's like a full evolution of what Lita was. Lita started that kind of alternative look for women in wrestling. And before that, you can look back to people like Wendy Richter and stuff like that. But ultimately, she is the perfect evolution of everything that you would want in a women's wrestler right now. I am gushing over this match. It was world class. I love this match. It is already an early contender for match of the year. I will be, well, I mean, I'll tell you what, there are some amazing women in this company. They're going to have to go some to try and beat that. That was fantastic. You won't see a better last man or women's standing match all year, in my opinion.
That match was probably the best last man standing / women standing that I've seen since probably No Mercy 2008. Wasn't that the one with Orton and Triple H?
I do like that. I'm quite a big fan of Kane versus Jericho from Armageddon 2000.
That was a good one too.
Yeah, also Triple H versus Jericho as well at Fully Loaded.
Oh my God.
As well.
Yeah.
Triple H actually the master of the last man standing match. So
indeed.
Yeah.
But no, this, oh my God. This just proves that Rhea Ripley is ready.
Yeah.
She is ready to go, and I'm going to put this out there for everybody to hear. My pick for the Women's Royal Rumble this year is Rhea Ripley.
Brave choice. Good choice.
Very brave choice.
Good choice. She's got to be in it.
She's got to be.
I would wait. I would wait till the Rumble to debut her on the main roster.
I wouldn't mind seeing Raquel Gonzalez in the Rumble.
I mean, she could have a. There's no reason why these women can't have a turn. Obviously, because they haven't got as many women as they have men on the roster, it's much easier to slot in somebody. You know, we've seen Casey Catanzaro, for instance, have a fantastic little turn in the Rumble. It's a good place. I think Xia Li, who we're about to chat about, she would make for a nice little appearance in this as well. Man, the future of women's wrestling in WWE is fantastic. You can say what you like about WWE with the COVID protocol and everything that goes on with it, but I'll tell you what, there is no denying the best women's wrestling in the world.
Indeed.
Is in-house in WWE and NXT. And when people say not WWE, NXT, they're all under the same umbrella. Just get over it, please.
The only difference is one's run by Hunter and one's run by Vince.
They're all funded by the same bank.
Right.
Bank.
They're all the same umbrella. It's just two different creatives.
Yeah, and also
which you can definitely tell.
The main roster has Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks and Bayley and Bianca Belair and Asuka and oh my lord, it's a wealth of riches.
And NXT has Rhea Ripley and Shotzi Blackheart and Candice LeRae, Io Shirai, Raquel Gonzalez, Dakota Kai.
But honestly, have just women's shows, and I'd be okay with that. I really
yes. Give me another women's evolution.
Yeah, that I'm amazed they haven't done that yet, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do to try and bolster ratings as they struggle this year. But they should have been doing that every year from that point onwards anyway, because it shouldn't just be a novelty. It should be a long-term thing, because these women are incredible. These women are the best part of everything that I watch, and this is the reason why I prefer to watch NXT, is genuinely because the women's wrestling is so superior in every sense to what Dynamite.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, I know we're going to talk about AEW in another video, but when you look at this cards, you have Abaddon versus Hikaru Shida on AEW, and you've got Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Gonzalez in the last.
There's nothing wrong with those two either. They're great women's wrestlers, and I really like Hikaru Shida, but at the same time, you know, they're not afforded enough time to be booked properly. And both shows have exactly the same amount of time, so there's no excuse for why AEW doesn't book women's wrestling, but we could do a separate video based on that alone. Xia Li made an appearance, walloping some poor lucha lady. I've forgotten her name because I don't care, frankly.
Katrina something.
Yeah,
Katrina Ramos. I don't.
No idea. Sorry, love, but you got battered.
Yeah.
It's as simple
she almost looked like Sexy Star from Lucha Underground.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm wondering if it was her and that she just
was it Cortez or something? I think I'm pretty sure I saw her in a Mae Young Classic, possibly.
Maybe.
Whatever. But either way, this was a great chance. So Xia Li has kind of really struggled to find a place on this roster because she's just been very sweet, likable little Chinese lady ultimately. And now they're really playing up to this. They're like, hang about. You are a martial artist, legitimately a world-class one. Why don't we just make you a vicious Mortal Kombat-esque character? And now they've brought in this almost nod to the triad as well. And I'm loving it.
Reminded me of Katana a little bit.
Honestly, after watching Impact and seeing Karate Man, I didn't think I'd get enough of my fill of Mortal Kombat for the week, and then they just threw some more at me, and I was so happy about that because that was fucking phenomenal. So we get Mortal Kombat, and now we get Kickboxer and Bloodsport, and I love it. It's so good. I love the gimmick behind it. I love the fact that they're using, I believe, the other Chinese lad who's kind of at ringside, looks like a triad, like Hitman, Agent, Shades, and everything.
Boa.
Always work. Yeah, fucking phenomenal look that guy's got. Really cool. And you've got this unique entity, this kind of mask-wearing guy who sits at the chair. I love the entrance, the darkness, the way they kind of shadow around him. I really like the promos building up to this for the weeks as well. This kind of, you know, they're almost like abducted and forced into this dark ritualistic training to not feel any pain. And I tell you what, Xia Li, I follow her on Instagram, obviously. Who doesn't follow beautiful women like that on Instagram? And she's so shredded, and she's actually put a lot of time into her training, and her body is at an all-time peak. She looks so jacked, and this coincides beautifully with this gimmick, and she dispatched this woman with a violent inverted roundhouse kick, just absolutely beautiful, and just you know what? When I was watching this, I couldn't help but feel that this was how I think they wanted Kenta to be when he was part of Hideo Itami, when he was part of NXT, and that fell flat on its ass. And she actually captures that essence far better. She's very much a female Kenta in a lot of ways, but she's her
Let's
own
just
character.
hope that she doesn't end up like Kenzo Suzuki.
Yeah, no, that's I shouldn't think that would be the case. It seems to me that the women have been afforded now the opportunity to kind of stand out on their own, and for the most part, they don't drop the ball with the women, and I love that. WWE has got a great track record of making women's wrestling look world class in the last couple of years, and particularly here. I'm intrigued. I'm excited. I think it looks good. There was quite a few little bits and bobs, weren't there, leading into the main event as well. They kind of crammed some stuff in. Unfortunately, we didn't get the fight pit match we were expecting. Timothy Thatcher versus Tommaso Ciampa. Thatcher has a minor injury. We will get that later down the line. That's probably quite good because they'll probably use that on an NXT weekly, and that will certainly draw in some ratings because who doesn't want to watch those two in a UFC-like manner battering the shite out of each other? So I'm looking forward to that. We also had a surprise appearance from The Way.
The Way.
I'm liking this. I didn't think I would at first because I'm not a big fan of mishmash factions where you just throw some people together. But it's all about the soul of Gargano as this obnoxious little prick, and he's so good at it. And I disagree vehemently with people who say that he's a terrible heel. I think you're wrong. I think he's phenomenal. He gets great heat. I think Candice LeRae is stunning at his side. She's beautiful, but she's also really credible because she can whip ass with the best of them. I'm not as hot on Indy Hartwell. She just kind of seems like a bit of a now I know Austin Theory is not very popular because of obviously allegations and things like that. But if I'm analyzing him solely from a wrestling perspective, he was very funny in this segment. You know, he got shot in the ghoulies. Which is one of my favorite lines of all time, where Wade Barrow's like, he just got shot in the ghoulies. I was like, that is amazing. So English. So fucking.
Oh, God, yes.
I was so happy. The tank shot. Obviously, you know, Shotzi Blackheart comes down and interferes. Before that, we had that amazing promo as well. And Gargano's talking about how I'm the sexiest dancer. And Candice is like, do you know what? You might be the most powerful man in the world right now. It's like, you know what? I think I might be. It's so funny. It's so
Shout out to Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. Talking about the Cleveland Browns and masturbating furiously over the fact they'll be in the playoffs. It's so good. So good.
And the picture that Indy and Austin. Oh, fuck.
What a beautiful piece of art. And Dexter Lumis is probably ringside going, hey, fuck you. I've got art. You know, he was the host of this show. And of course, Dexter Lumis, the bell rings, of course, when Kushida and Shotzi come out. And Dexter Lumis is just like, yeah, I'm in charge. Oh, okay. No one's going to argue with him because he looks like a serial killer in the world's nicest tuxedo. I love the fact that he was on commentary and refused to say a word. That was quite funny as well. And Wade Barrett's like, he's like, are you going to rip on his tuxedo? It's like, shut your mouth. He's terrifying me. It's like, I really.
And then he did say something about Loomis's. What was it? Loomis's something or another, and
he said something about his tailor.
Yeah, and Vic Joseph's like.
He said, you look like trash.
You hear that?
You know, I really love the comedic energy between Vic Joseph and Wade Barrett. I genuinely think this is becoming one of the best commentary teams in the world. They're so funny, so entertaining, but they can be serious when they need to be. And I really love that. And of course, they've got that really cool little bit of analysis that comes from Beth Phoenix, who's kind of off camera, so to speak. She's kind of, I don't know if she's providing analysis from home or whatever it might be.
I was going to say, I'm wondering if she's doing like Zoom call from home.
I think so, yeah. I think so. It works well, though, actually. I like it.
It does.
It's very refreshing, and it's very similar
except for the first time that they did it, and they had some stand-in with Vic and Wade standing in for Beth, and they're like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah, very strange. Very strange. I'm glad I got away from that. But this is very reminiscent of sports broadcasting, you know, sort of panning. You know, you'll have a very legitimate female journalist, maybe at ringside or wherever it might be, pitch side, discussing, you know, the sort of ins and outs and things. And obviously Beth Phoenix adds a lot of credibility because she was such a world-class women's wrestler in her own right and very well decorated and rightfully so. But yeah, fun little match just to fill things in. Bronson Reed was at ringside as well for the women's match. I forgot to mention that. Really looking forward to seeing what they do with him later down the line. Kushida getting a win, obviously, over Gargano sets him up nicely as the next contender for the North American Championship, which is going to be a fucking banger. I mean, that's two of the best wrestlers in the world. Those guys could get away with being cruiserweights. Actually, like it's that's how good they are. They're so special and yet much smaller kind of wrestlers. And I love the fact that in this day and age, you can get away with having smaller guys like this challenging for their version of the IC title, and it doesn't miss a beat. And I love it. I love it. There's great crossover, and also it means that if you want to push Santos Escobar further than being just a cruiserweight champion, you can say, well, these guys are a similar size to him, so there's no problem there.
Exactly.
Great warm-ups, great little filler, brings the tone down a bit, calms you down after that women's match, of course, because next up is the main event for the NXT Championship. The Prince himself, Finn Balor, defending against everyone's favorite guitarist, Kyle O'Reilly. Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly. Now, this match had quite an abrupt ending, actually. Very similar to the last one. They wanted to tell the story about the bad chin, the jaw. The idea was a receipt. Now, Wade Barrett did a great job on commentary talking about receipts in wrestling. And as you and me will know as trainees, receipts, the idea is that someone gives you one, you give them one back with an extra bit of interest. And that's essentially what this match was about. Finn Balor wanted to make an example of Kyle O'Reilly's jaw the same way that he did. Now, the only thing that annoyed me about this storyline was the fact that Finn Balor hasn't defended that title essentially for 3 months. And that's very disappointing because obviously Karrion Kross, when he got injured, was immediately disposed as champion and had to remove the belt from him. Why does Finn Balor get the luxury of keeping the belt? You've always made a very big point about, the champion should defend the belt at least once every 30 days for whatever reason, or even if he doesn't, it's nice to see him on screen regularly. If Brock Lesnar had done this, people would have lost their shit and been like, he's scum and he's holding hostage. And obviously, I don't, believe that to be the case with Finn Balor or Brock Lesnar at this stage. But it was a little bit like, I haven't seen this belt properly defended for 3 months. That being said, it's a world-class match. It is exactly what it is. I didn't actually think it was as good as the first one, which will upset a few people, I'm sure. Maybe time was on their side a bit more as well with the last one, which helped. I think they went sort of 30 to 40 minutes. This kind of felt a little bit shorter, 20, 25 minutes maybe. But it was obviously a technical masterpiece. Every single match on this show was different to the other, which meant that every single one gave you an opportunity to feel and enjoy a different variety, a different spectrum of what wrestling is. And this was just 2 physical, very highly technically adept wrestlers. I'm not Finn Balor's biggest fan. Very similar to Kenny Omega. I think he's a world-class athlete with a world-class look. I don't like his character. I find him boring. I don't think he's a very good mic worker. That upsets people. But there is no questioning the in-ring technicalities. I must admit, I would probably choose Balor over Omega if I had a choice. I think he's just more polished. And I think a lot of that comes down to being in the WWE system. And ultimately, he is the original Bullet Club. None of this fucking knockoff shite that you're talking about. By the way, Carl Anderson is the heart of the Bullet Club, not Kenny Omega. Go fuck yourself. I'm just putting that out there. And also Tama Tonga, who will literally...
I love the tweet that Tama Tonga's put out there that it's not a Bullet Club unless you got the Tongans.
Yeah, exactly. It's really not. Exactly. You need to up your ethnicity, bruv. Sort it out. It's as simple. It's just like WrestlePlug just ain't the WrestlePlug without its Arab identity. I'm just saying. Somebody needs to put the Cairo effect in order. But this was a great match. What can you say about it? I mean, I could sit here and tell you all day about how amazing it was, but you guys already know. You saw the match. It was phenomenal. It was world class. It was 2 top quality wrestlers. It was a very abrupt ending. Disappointed that Kyle O'Reilly tapped out because for me, he's like the technical master, the submission master. So it was really heartbreaking to see. But I tell you what, the way they sold it at the end and the way he just sat there in the corner so desolate and so miserable proved to me why I prefer Kyle O'Reilly to Finn Balor as a character as well as a wrestler, because the facial expressions were there more. That being said, Finn Balor looked actually phenomenal at the end with the blood and the kind of bruising and everything. He looked like a true warrior. He looked a bit like Frank Dukes at the end of Bloodsport. He's taken the battering, but he stands aloft with what matters most, and that is, of course, the NXT Championship. Great match, world class. Not quite as world class as their first one, though, for me, but still very fitting and worthy of being a main event. And bearing in mind, this wasn't a takeover. This was essentially a mini pay-per-view. For this to just be a weekly TV show, essentially, but with a fancy name, tells you everything you need to know about how the quality of NXT is in place. And I really don't agree with this this running storyline that I'm seeing on dirt sheets, etc., that NXT's ratings have dropped, and that's because Road Dogg's fucked it up, or because they're not, you know, Vince has more of an input or whatever. I actually think NXT's as good as it's ever been. This was world class. I love their storylines.
Yeah.
Their use of women's wrestling is the best in the world, period. Nobody else touches them. Impact gets close, but not quite close enough. I honestly don't know how anyone could complain after watching a show like this. There was a plethora of world-class characters, great wrestlers. There were top-quality matches. You had damn near a 5-star women's wrestling match, which is becoming more and more the norm, which is fantastic. A nice little prelude to the Rumble as well, gets you all warmed up nicely. There's loads of content going on. Obviously, the Rumble will be at the end of the month. You know, watching this and listening to you talk about how you'd like to see Rhea Ripley, for instance, when the women's Rumble, how you'd like to see Damian Priest enter the men's Rumble. All of a sudden, now watching this, I'm now sitting here thinking, ooh, some of these stars can now interject themselves more into the main roster, because NXT feels like an extension as opposed to a developmental program more so.
Indeed.
Excellent. World class. Really loved it. Any final thoughts, mate?
A couple of final thoughts. The Balor tapping out Kyle O'Reilly, I'm wondering if maybe they're trying to transition him to have a new finisher, because I don't think he could hit the 1916 on Karrion Kross. I think Kross,
well, I mean, he can still hit the coup de grace, can't he? Which
he could hit the coup de grace, but
I don't think he even used the coup de grace.
He didn't use the coup de grace.
No.
He doesn't use the coup de grace in NXT.
Maybe they're trying to get away from that a little bit. There are a lot of people.
I mean, he did do that. The one that he does when he's on the mat and stomps on their chest, and they call that the coup de grace. So there's that, and then the interaction at the end when, you know, Kyle's in the corner and Adam and Bobby and Roddy are checking on him, and Adam looks at Finn and is like, "Fuck off, get away from him! Just you get away from him." It's like,
don't touch my boy.
Don't touch my boy.
Yeah. It's also worth pointing out as well that obviously they announced the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic starts next week, but they're also going to have a women's one, which is phenomenal. Again, well ahead of the curve.
Yes,
with women's
that was the
wrestling.
other thing.
And I'm really excited because we're not getting the traditional Undisputed Era pairing. We're getting Adam Cole and Roderick Strong. And I think that's very cool. And that flexes Adam Cole's appearance. Obviously, grizzled young veterans are going to be in there. They are my pick. They are my
Everrise.
I'm behind my boys. Come on, GYV. Everrise, don't really care about them. They're going to get swatted by the English.
Breezango's in it.
Breezango versus Undisputed Era is in the first round. That should be phenomenal. And they'll also
obviously
you've got Undisputed Era versus Breezango next week, and you've also got Everrise versus GYV. So for anyone who hasn't seen GYV, make sure you tune into NXT next week, because they are legitimately one of the best tag teams in the world, period. I've obviously had the luxury of watching these guys for years on the Brit Rest scene. I'm thrilled to see them on the main NXT roster as opposed to NXT UK. It's going to be superb. I cannot wait. And obviously there's you know, Imperium's going to be in there as well. Now a world-class tag team outfit. It's shaping up very, very, very nicely. And of course the winner is probably going to face Lorcan and Birch. So sets it up very nicely for a face team to win. Be interesting to see who they pick. I
would not mind to see Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory win.
Do you know what? It's so difficult, isn't it? Because you know, from a personal aspect, if what Austin Theory has, you know, alleged to have done is proven, then obviously trash, get rid of him. But until that is the case, I have to, you know, I like to be, you know, subjective in the sense of I want to look at, or objective, however you look at it, and I'd like to sort of say that he was actually very entertaining in what he does. And I actually think him and Gargano have a lot of potential as a tag team as well, and should be a lot of fun in there. But the women's one should be fantastic as well. Very exciting. You've got to think there's going to be Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez in there. That would be, I think, a very, very good idea to have them win and then maybe challenge the women's tag team champions on the main roster at some point. But either way, very exciting.
Obviously, we're probably going to get Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell.
Yes, yeah, they're most likely going to be a pairing.
Shotzi Blackheart and maybe
Caden Carter and Casey Catanzaro. They're a pairing, aren't they? Get on very well, those two. That would seem to be a good pairing. The only problem is, of course, that it's a bit more of a stretch to have women's tag teams, but it's, you know, give them opportunity anyway. You know, you can't build a women's division unless they start from somewhere.
Right.
the tag team division. And there's nothing to say that you couldn't bring down one of the powerhouses. It would be very cool if Io Shirai tagged up with someone like Asuka or something. That would be very cool. You could, I know that's the dream tag team for so many people, isn't it, in the women's division? It's a shame that the Kabuki Warriors aren't still around, because I think they'd be a fantastic little sort of buffer for it. There's nothing wrong with using some of the main roster talent,
Right.
I think it would be very, very awesome. So, but nonetheless, great pay-per-view. NXT kills it as always.
Yes.
Jeremy Miller, thank you very much, mate. I appreciate you coming back onto the Wrestle Blog to help us out and discuss
Anytime,
music.
my brother. Anytime.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for our NXT coverage. Hopefully you're enjoying our daily reviews of content. And we've already got, obviously, Raw and Impact up, so you can check out my thoughts on Goldberg and everything else that comes with that. And, of course, Karate Man. You can watch me fapping over Ethan Page for 10 minutes too. Check it out. It's going to be saucy. Obviously, we have Impact Wrestling's Genesis. We'll drop some predictions for that most likely tomorrow or Friday, so you guys can check that out too. And also, obviously, we've got Hard to Kill coming the week after that as well. So,
Hard to Kill.
There's a lot of content coming, and we hope to cover the majority of it as always. I will be back to discuss AEW. Jeremy Miller might be joining me for that as well, and I'll definitely be back to discuss SmackDown as well, because it looks like it's going to be a big SmackDown this week too. If you're liking all this content, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz, and most importantly, make sure you click on the bell icon, and that'll give you notifications of any of our content going forward. But from myself, Aaron X, and from Jeremy Miller, make sure you check out Sly Fox Sports Broadcasting, Sly Fox Sports Pod at Sly Fox Sports Pod on the Twitter, of course. And until then, we'll catch you very soon for more content from the Wrestle Plug. We are out.
We are out.